Okay, hello everyone. Thank you for attending our webinar on Duplicare. Happy to have you all along. I'm just going to give you a few quick introductions and then we'll dive into the content. So I want to quickly introduce the team that we've got on the call today. So I'm Mark Carrington, there in the middle. So I'm the Chief Technologist at Data8. So that makes me in charge of developing all these solutions, keeping abreast of all the huge number of changes coming out of Microsoft around the Power Platform and Dynamics. With me, I've got Matt Beard. He's our development team lead, who's really gets to grips with the development of this product, and he'll be leading a demonstration today. And also online, we've got Anthony Allen, our managing director, if you've got any sort of commercial queries along the way. We do have the Q&A open. If you open the Q&A panel in Teams, you'll be able to ask questions in there, and we'll try and get to those as soon as we can do. Feel free to put them into the chat there anytime you want during the session, and we will try and answer them whenever it kind of it fits into the flow of today, and we'll try and make sure we clear all of them up by the end anyway. So just to give you a little bit of background before we dive straight into a demo. So just to put a sort of the idea of the scale of data quality, I'm not going to read through all these slides, far too many numbers on there, but just to give you a flavour of data quality can be an absolutely massive problem. So duplicates is the area of that we're going to look at today. But yeah, it can cover all sorts of things from phone numbers, incorrect addresses, just generally contributing towards wasting time in your business. And it all adds up to pounds or dollars at the end of the day. So in the next hour, we're going to have a look about Data8, generally about some of our CRM solutions that we've got available. We're going to spend most of the time looking at a demonstration of our Duplicare product. We're going to call out specifically a bunch of features that are new in our very latest release. It's coming out this week. And say hopefully have time for any questions, at least by the end. So Data8, for those of you that are new to us, so we are a gold Microsoft ISV, and we have experience since 2005, so what's that, 15 years now, providing data quality solutions, and a large part of that in the Microsoft space. Particular bit of this I would call out is the security accreditations down at the bottom there. Obviously, no one can talk about data without talking about security these days. So we do have the ISO 27001 accreditation, which is the key one that everyone will be looking for. And we've got some new developments around data and data security that we'd like to show you today as well. Just kind of stepping to the side slightly before we dive in too much more with CRM. We have made a relatively recent acquisition middle of last year, which is of TK Dialogues, which is all about trying to automate common processes that you might find in sort of call center type applications, internal repetitive processes, trying to reduce the amount of time it takes to train up new people to follow those business processes by providing simple, consistent user experiences. So that is now coming under the Data8 banner. I hope to have some more announcements about that later this year as we integrate that more into our products. But if you do have any requirements around that sort of area, then please let us know. So looking more at the Data8 area and our CRM integrations, we have clients from all around the world. We've got some very big name clients there, hopefully some of those that you will definitely recognize. One in particular I'd like to call out as a very good case study of Duplicare is Dynamic Communities, who run the D365 user groups, among others. They made an acquisition a couple of years ago of Extreme 365. Obviously, there's lots of overlap in their customers there, so Duplicare in particular was used to try and merge those customers together. So if you're a member of those communities, probably processed that data through dynamic communities already. And that's in sort of day-to-day use there, to try and keep on top of duplicate registrations coming in on a continuous basis. So to give you an idea of the scale of Duplicare just specifically, so in the last 2 years, 1 month, we've processed just over 1.8 billion records through Duplicare. So this is a significantly sized operation here. And across Datarate, since we started, we've processed just over 270 billion records there. So yeah, we've got a lot of experience processing an awful lot of different types of data. The way we process data is roughly split down into these 4 areas. So we've got sort of real-time type validation, commonly around addresses. So this is trying to help the user experience as you enter data in the first place, whether that's in your CRM system or on websites. Trying to manage that data once it's in there, so things around just trying to keep it clean, doing migrations, applying governance to that. Making use of that for marketing, so things like building single customer views. And finally, making sure that all of that technology is available where it's best used, so integrating that directly into products like Microsoft Dynamics and other ones that we won't mention today. So in the Dynamics and Power Platform space, we've now got 7 solutions listed in AppSource, listed or in the process of being listed. I think there's 1 or 2 still working their way through that process. The one we'll be spending time on today is Duplicare, but we do have all these other ones listed there to try and help you keep on top of different aspects of data quality. So we've got Provenance, which is our GDPR compliance tool, help you manage things like the right to erasure and managing consent. We've got a few across the middle there, which are all about validating different types of data, so email and phone validation. Predictive Address is all about helping you enter valid addresses and improving that customer experience again as you do it, for making that a nice autocomplete solution. And Bank Account Validation is all about UK, Ireland, and European bank account details if you're capturing that to do direct debits or anything from members, for example. You can embed that now directly within Dynamics. And then a couple of other recent additions at the bottom. Our Business Insights one is all about getting firmographic details, so getting information about the companies that you're doing business with. That will be going live in the AppSource in the next few days. And TPS is all about staying compliant with the UK telephone preference service legislation, making sure that you're not calling people that you shouldn't be calling. Just to give you a little idea of what some of those look like. So Predictive Address, you can see here a demo of this in the old UI. We've recently done an update to get this compatible with the unified interface as well. So you just start typing an address in, you get a list to pick from, and you get a complete, accurately, consistently formatted address straight into your standard address fields. For email addresses and for phone numbers, again, just as you type, you're getting immediate feedback on whether the data is valid or not. In some cases, we can suggest corrections, and same again for phone numbers. So again, just working how a regular Dynamics user would expect it to work. So there's no sort of learning curve here. These are embedded as natively as we can within the Dynamics user experience. So diving into Duplicare specifically, which is what we want to spend our time on today. So Duplicare is all about providing advanced fuzzy duplicate detection and multi-record merging within Dynamics. So it's really designed, again, to be as native to the Dynamics experience as possible. So working the way you would hope that Dynamics just did out of the box is what we were really trying to aim for. So to give you a little flavour of what that standard experience is and how we think we can do better, let's take a little trip back in time. So if we go back 13 years, 2007. So what's changed in that time? So if you ever think back, other technology changes along the way. iPhone 1, if you've ever used an iPhone 1 recently or an early iPhone, they were transformational at the time, and they seem so outdated now. So a lot of things can change, but some things can stay the same. And one of those is this whole data management thing within Dynamics. If you have a look there, so 2007 was when Dynamics 4.0 was released, bringing that up to date today. So when you're setting up a duplicate detection rule here, nothing's changed there, really. It's changed from blue to white. If you look very closely, there's one extra box there, so you can exclude inactive records from matching your duplicate rules, but that's it. Everything else has just remained exactly the same. It doesn't even work in the unified interface yet. You're still in the old UI to go and set those up. What about when you run those rules to try and find duplicates in your system? Again, it's exactly the same. It's actually marginally worse now because of the formatting changes means you can actually see less on screen at one time. And again, not there in the unified interface yet. Merging is again exactly the same. So you can merge two records, pick your field from the left or right sides. And it is there in the unified interface. It's exactly the same. It's not made any better by it, but it is at least there. One slight improvement in this that has come along, used to be able to merge the account, contacts, and lead entities. You are now able to at least merge the case entity as well, but no more than that. You're still only restricted to those 4 entities. So this is where we were really coming from, that with these tools, it's really difficult to do what you need to do with your data to keep it at the quality level that most people are really looking at. It's very reliant on the user putting in data in the right way for the rules to work properly. We were looking at exact match rules. A common one we see is University of Southampton versus Southampton University. That sort of structure just will not match unless you make it so fuzzy as to just pick up everything as a match. Things like if you got 2 email addresses or 2 phone numbers on the same record, trying to match those together, trying to merge them, it just makes it so much harder than it possibly needs to be. So we thought we could do rather better than this. We were encountering so many CRM customers who had these same consistent issues with their CRM data. Their data was already in CRM. It wasn't part of a migration, it was just already there. We needed to fix it up in place. We didn't want to do horrible export, fix it up, push it back into new systems. We wanted to work with their day-to-day system. So I think it's at this point, I'm going to throw over to Matt now to take you through what it really looks like.
Thank you, Mark. If I share a screen, get over the Teams warnings, we want to share that screen. Hopefully you can see a screen being shared. I can shove that one up there. Mark, if you can't see my screen at any point, feel free to dive in and correct me. Okay, so thank you very much, Mark. As he mentioned, there's a number of parts of the sort of Dynamics and the CDS world that we want to fix. And there's a nice little route through this demo that I like to take that will show you all these different parts and sort of it jigsaw pieces all together into this nice big complete puzzle that solves a bunch of things. So I'll start at a sort of sometimes feels like a weird place, but you quickly will understand why I'm doing it and taking this route through it. So when you think about duplicates, generally the thing we have found is that if you've only got 2 of the same record, you've done well. Historically, you normally have 3, 4, 5 of the same record, and the data in all those records can be different or can be identical. But in the situation where they're different, you have to go through a process of going 2 records, then 2 records, then 2 records, And if you want your day-to-day users to handle those things, and you're trying to promote data quality to those, but then you're trying to tell your salespeople or your marketing team that they have to spend hours a day merging these 6 records into one, you struggle to get the buy-in. You struggle to have them devote the time to it, because they see their records are bad and they see other people's records are bad, and there's this whole idea of the system already isn't great. I'm not making it any worse. So what you want to do is you want to improve the flow of which they do it, make their user experience better, and also instill confidence in the system itself. So you want to get rid of those duplicates moving forward, and keep on top of them as well, because you don't want to do a bunch of hard work which you then immediately lose. So what you can do, the very first thing we've got here is, you can see here I've got 4 examples of a duplicate. So I can now tick all 4, and you'll notice I still have a merge button. My merge button hasn't disappeared. So what this is doing is this is actually replaced the out-of-the-box merge window with what we took as a wish list, and we spoke to many other people and what they wanted in there. So what this now is a much more powerful merge screen. It can initially look a little overwhelming compared to what you're used to, but as soon as you start digging into it and you realize the benefits of it, then users are very quickly understanding of why the decisions were made that were there. So what we have here is nice and easy. We have the 4 columns here, which are the 4 records I've selected, but now is a 5th column. So this is what your record looks like at the end of your, when you were to sort of commit this to your database or CDS or whatever words we're using nowadays. And what you can do in this system is you can allow it to have rules for every single field. You have an unlimited amount of rules for as many fields as you want. So you can really start piecing together your data and making it make sense. Now, what I mean by rule, first name is a nice simple example. I've got a rule in place there that says take the longest name. Generally, you would prefer a Matthew over a Matt. And that's normally the case with most people's names. We've always seen that the longer the name, it's generally more accurate. So you can see this example, even though there's 2 Matts in there, the Matthew won the race essentially, and that's what now went into the output record. You can see here for a job title, you can see that there is a number of data in there. So this is from sort of the sample data. So I own a dog, I'm a daddy, I'm also a developer twice in there. But what this rule does instead is, instead of taking one or the other, gets clever with the rule and actually concatenates them. And not only does it concatenate them, it dedupes at that level as well. So you don't want developer in there twice. So you can see that it's only in there once. You will notice as I'm clicking there, that's right, this is free text. So I don't need to only live with the values that this gives me, which the out of the box does. What the out of the box makes you do is you pick left or right, and that's all you can possibly do. Well, that isn't necessarily right. You might want to change this. So in fact, I might want to change this entirely to just be a different job title, so I can free text into there, and it just now works. But I don't want to do necessarily all typing as well. So the UK is easy. I can tell a mobile or a cell number from a landline number because they start with 07. So what I can do in this case, I can just drag and drop, and you can see as I'm dragging things turn yellow. So I can put them in different places and just keep them neat and tidy. The red, in case you're curious what that is highlighting data that isn't visible once you were to complete this. So because Matthew would win this race, these other values would exist somewhere, possibly in an inactive record behind the scenes, but the visible record that people are going to care about, that data isn't going to be visible. For stuff like topic, it's less relevant, but if you were trying to think that you had to fit 4 emails into 3 email fields, you're going to want to know which of those emails you're potentially throwing away, because you are, quite frankly, throwing away what could be valid data. So we're just trying to assist you in every single way we can. You'll notice there that source location is read-only. That is on your form, but read-only, so we adhere to those rules. And another rule, this is a clever one, and this is one that I think solves a lot of problems people have had in the past, which is to sort of emails and telephones and fields that can contain repeating data. In a world of left and right, there becomes a situation where you can see there I've got Matt B, Matt B, Matt B, and a Matt.beard. In the out of the box, when I was doing 2 at a time, there would come a situation where I would have to pick between that email or that email, and I would have no other way around it. I would have to make a decision to lose one of those emails, and depending on the order I did it, I wouldn't have ever known that these 2 were in here to help influence that decision even more. So now instead what we can do is these fields are linked together. So we can see here with email that the most popular email, the one that exists there most of the time, goes into email 1. But this email 2, we're not going to throw it away. Instead, we will move it to email 2. So even though the mat.beard never exists anywhere in email address 2, it's popular in that field. So we're not throwing the data away. We're just sort of categorizing it and prioritizing it and putting it into the places where it's supposed to be. And that's it with our record. So I can also do the drop-down box. So you can see that this lead is in here 4 times. It's probably more like a hot lead than a warm lead. So I can change that value. And finally, master. So this is the record that stays alive at the end. Again, you can configure that to whichever record you want it to be. By default, it will be the earliest created on record, but you can overrule that as much as you possibly want. If we've seen situations where they want to prioritize records in certain business units or records made by certain people, you can do all of that to those levels. And once you've made all your decisions and you've worked through the list, you just press merge. So what this is doing behind the scenes is that's firstly probably waking itself up because I've not done the demo for a little while. But what that's doing behind the scenes is that's calculating the most efficient way of doing the merge. Now, behind the scenes, that is still doing a merge. So if you were to have a plugin that you fire on merge or update certain fields or those sorts of things, then they will all still fire. And you know that by if I go to this record, and I think actually it's difficult to see in the new interface, but you get the point. You can see that I have a merged yes that is set out of the box. And if I was to go in the record, what you certainly used to see in the old interface, and they have removed it, but you could restore it, is you would get a pop-up that would say this record was disqualified and merged with this record. The merge with still exists in a field that's called master ID behind the scenes, but the point is that it's a proof that we are doing the out-of-the-box merge, so we're not doing anything clever. What that also means is things like activities and related records. If you're configured to do so, which by default you are, they will move across with you. So if your 2 Matt Beards both have their email attached to them, both will move across to the master Matt Beard account record. Sorry. Now, what you can do, and we find this in a lot of our clients, I would say most of our clients, is that because those rules for a field can become so refined, you get to a stage where they're right. They do what they need to do. When you get to that stage, what you can do is you can introduce another option. So I can now pick on all my Anthony Allens and variations of his name. I've got 9 selected, and I've now got a single button that does a quick merge. So what that's going to do is it's going to take that output record that you saw in the merge window as the right thing. Those rules are correct. That's now merged all those records on a single click. So if I had to go back to close these now, you will see I've got a lot of records all as merged. So this isn't day one stuff. This isn't where you go with it. But when you get there and you refine it and you make it right, you can speed up process for so many people so often. And that's a real benefit of the merge stuff. What we do is we handle all the configuration for you. So we have this thing called Merge Plus rules. I'm in a demo model-driven app here. What you will get included in your installation, you have a duplicate administration model-driven app, so you can go and handle all your stuff in there. I'll move on to that shortly, but for now I've got a shortcut within this model-driven app as well. So everything is configured by a Merge Plus rule. You make a new Merge Plus rule, you type an entity name out. What we do is we handle all the magic behind the ribbon buttons and that sort of stuff, and we will give you the button. If you notice here, as well as account contact lead, which are the ones out of the box you can merge, I've got a couple of others. So what that means is we spent a long time and worked out the exact same thing. So now in an opportunity, I can select 2, and I still have a merge. So it's the same user experience, they have the same interface, there is nothing different on it. The rules are, again, clever. This is a sum of revenue now. This isn't a left or right, this is a sum. And I can now press merge on that. Now, obviously, behind the scenes, merge on these doesn't exist. So what we actually do is we calculate the best way of doing a merge on that, and we worked out precisely how the merge handles behind the scenes and what it does, and we sort of recreate all that behavior. So once you get to that point, you press merge, and that would complete that through. And exactly the same for custom entities. So I've got a custom entity here that has 3 sub-records. I have another one here that has 7 sub-records. And what I can do with that, I can do a quick merge on that. What I should then do is I should then have a single record left over. And if I was to go into there and look at my related, you can see that all of them have combined into one. So this is done all the can get the what's the word, cascading rules behind the scenes, and even though it's a custom entity, it's handled exactly the same as it would with any other entity. So that segregation of accounts, contact leads, and cases is a thing of the past now, when people get the same sort of flow going through there. Excuse me. So that is merged. One of the other things that we also have in place, and this is a useful one I find, is, and it's just a little sort of bonus feature towards this, is finding records to merge them could sometimes be problematic. So we had an instance where a company that began with the letter A renamed them, were named, the name began with the letter Y, for example. Now, to merge those in the system, unless they're in the same window like this, it's difficult. And what do you want to do? Go make an advanced find and do it that way, or do you want to just there's ways of doing it, but you end up with dozens of saved views or dozens of advanced finds or whatever, and it becomes a mess. So what we did is we introduced a new option, which was just basically something that we thought was useful internally. And again, like a lot of this tool, if us or a client has seen the use for it, then we generally get to put it in there. So I'm now in a record, and I can now go into here and I can remember this record. So that just remembers this record, and I can carry on browsing as I naturally would. And I can pick another record, and what I can then do, I can then remember that record, and then if I pick a final record, that'll do. I can then go up here and I can merge remembered. So it's just a way of putting those records side by side. So it's just a little shortcut in the ribbon. That's just a nice little useful way of speeding up certain processes that certain people missed. Okay, so that is merging, that's handling records. This is nothing to do with finding duplicates or managing them moving forward. But it's still useful because we'll use this in a bunch of places. So what I will move on to is finding duplicates, handling duplicates. So the first thing you need to think about is, how do you define a duplicate? The out-of-the-box rules aren't great. They are, if it's exact text, if it begins with, if it ends with, and that's pretty much where you're stuck at. If you were to look across emails, and using my example earlier, that email 1 is in email 1 sometimes and email 2 sometimes, your digit rules are going to struggle to get those. Your Matts and your Matthews you might just get based on how vague you are, but then when you think about Anthony's and Tony's and that sort of stuff, you hit more issues that way. So what we did is we built a layer on top of those, so we call them digit plus rules. So this has got a little user interface in here, and my example for contact is nice and easy. So what you see here is that I've got a contact to contact match. I am real-time enabled. I'll move on to that shortly. And again, I'm global search enabled. I'll move on to that shortly. Records to search. Yeah, let's move on to that as well. So I'll skip all those for now. And what you see here is a user interface that looks a bit like Advanced Find. So you can really build up your rule set. And the rule set in this example I've got here is I only care about active contacts. I want a fuzzy name match on first name, last name. So it's a much more powerful version of name matching. And I want fuzzy company name match from my company name's account's name. So I'm jumping up the relationship there. Out of the box, you are allowed a limited number of rules per entity. So you have to sort of prioritize what you think is important to you. Our system needs 1 behind the scenes. So what you can then do is you can get clever with ands and ors, and you can essentially negate that upper limit. So I can start putting all sorts of crazy criteria in here, ands and ors. And what I've seen people do here is have a specific set of rules for certain business units and a specific set of rules for other business units, or even at user level, if there's a user you don't trust, make them have stricter rules or that sort of stuff. So you can just edit that in here. So exact match makes sense. If I was to just pick a field name on one of these, you will see another benefit, which is things like fuzzy matches. So allow misspelling rates on percentages. So this is not just starts with, ends with. This is in the middle of the word of the percentage of typos and that sort of stuff. Exact match across fields. This is one of my favorites. So any combination of email 1, email 2, or email 3. Any combination of those is a duplicate. I don't care what field it's in. I just want them to be a duplicate. Fuzzy address match. You can guess what that is at this point. Fuzzy person name match. Single value. So that's your filter. So that's your status is active. Non-conflicting is a useful one if you have integrations in other systems. So maybe account numbers that comes from somewhere else. A map beard with an account number could be the map beard that doesn't have an account number, but definitely cannot be the map beard with a different account number. So as long as the data doesn't conflict, it could be a duplicate. That's what that rule says. And then the longly named intersecting multi-select pit list match is all to do with the multi-select pit list that you saw in V9 onwards, and if the same value is selected in across different records. Now, the other thing that's worth mentioning at this point, and this is one of our new features, we've only just launched this well, today, I guess, which is you can pick how wide you want to search. So by default, your records to search will be records only visible to the user based on their permissions. You don't want them to know there's a duplicate, because your system handles that with its security roles and business units and all that sort of stuff. But what you can alternatively do is you can now make it be all records. Now, this still isn't going to break your security, because what this will do is this will tell them there is a duplicate, but will not tell them anything else about that record. So it's not risking telling people things they can't know. But if you can only have one map in your system, what it will tell you is there is one that matches this criteria in there somewhere, but that's all you're going to know. So that's what that is there. In this case, I will leave it to what it was. Real-time enabled means, well, I'll show you now on global search. I will show you shortly. So remember those, and I'll get back to them in a minute. So now I've got that rule set up. What I do is I go into my my contacts, and I go to make a new contact. And the other thing you're about to see here, so this is our second new feature. So this is a brand new thing. This is probably one of the biggest things we just launched, which is a new PCF control on the form. So for those listening that are on premise, I apologize and feel your pain. This is a PCF that will give you a bit more responsive feedback on when you find your duplicates. So if I was to look for data 8, and I'll use a friend of mine whose name is fantastic for this, is that I will use Lewis Ronaldson. I start typing, and I will put his job title in there. I've barely done anything. I've just typed out a few fields, and not only have I been prompted this at the top, which is an older feature you may have seen if you've looked at this tool before. What we used to have to do was press save to go and see that record. But actually, what this new controller's done is immediately give you feedback on the screen, refresh without doing anything at all, what that record is. So I can now go and see that record if I was interested to go and have a look and see that record already. Now, what I will do on this is I can carry on this, and if I press save, this is where you see the window you're used to seeing. So this is where previously we only used to show the duplicates here. So we're sort of cut a little corner there that you can save an extra click. And what do you do here? What's your real choices? Once you know you've got a duplicate, what are your choices? You've got two, which is ignore and save or cancel. Now, ignore and save, what that realistically translates to is, yes, I know it's a duplicate, but I don't care. I will save it and I will go and fix it later on, I promise, and I don't. The other option you've got is cancel, which is, all right, I will admit this is a duplicate. What I will do is I will go and find the other record, and that new phone number I just got, I will go and retype it back out again, and I risk missing a key or mispressing a key or forgetting to do so. And again, having to make data entry happen twice is the thing that can often cause the problems, because life happens and people get distracted, and especially in the current climate, you get jumped on by a 2-year-old child, speaking from experience. So when you've done that, what you can do is you can hit cancel, and we've introduced now an option 3, which is a merge button. So what this does is this brings up a new merge window, same record you've seen before, but now what you can see is this is the contact that existed. This is the record that only exists on my screen right here, right now. So it's what we call it as a ghost contact. I can't make it master because it doesn't exist, but my rule sets have still applied. So that new job title that I got for him has gone into the master record. So I can make my decisions and I can hit merge on that. Now, what that's doing actually isn't a merge. What that's actually doing is an update. So if I jump back now, what that's done is that's took me to the original record. So it never made this new record. It jumped me to what was already there, but appended that new piece of data. So I didn't risk retyping it. The rule set's all fired in. So in the case of an email, if you had emails already in there, your email might jump into email 2 or 3 or 4 or whatever. But again, the benefit of it is you haven't had to retype it, which I think is actually a huge thing. So that's one way of finding duplicates as the point of entry. The other option you've got, which is something we launched late last year, I think. I did all plans into one at this point. It's this idea of global search. So what you can do is you can customize this form as you want to map to your rules, basically. So you can have, in this case, I don't really care about first name, last name, company name. Phone number isn't relevant to me finding a duplicate because it's not part of my duplicate rules. You can extend to do so, but for now I don't have that. So I can do data 8, and I can do the same search. So Lewis Ronaldson, and do a search. Now what I was doing is that searching across all of my rules that I've got at global search enabled, which is what that field you see was, and find any records. So what my my account digit rule that you saw in there was doing was also on global search enabled. So my search also searched for account level stuff. So the data EIGHT I entered found one matching the same name. Fuzzy logic also matched data 8 limited, so that's a super powerful fuzzy match. And even better than that, I found first name was spelt differently, surname was spelt differently, and the company name was spelt differently. So all levels of fuzziness were matched in there. And not only was the first name spelt differently, what this shows you is that there's phonetic matches in there as well. So there's more than just phonetics in there, but it's another example of a type of technology that's in there behind the scenes. So yes, that's how you find it. Now the extra thing that we often throw in there, and I don't know quite how up to date the data is on this system, is we have a duplicate management dashboard. So what this does is this will track when users see that duplicate detector window. It will also track when people fix them with a merge. It will track them by entity and by type. So you can see if you've got any holes in your system, or if you've got any people to be bad or not trained very well. And what you can do is you can start analyzing it this way. So I can see that in this system, I am absolutely terrible for making duplicates. In fact, I've made 2,300. So if you can tell who's making this demo system, then you get bonus points. That's my cop out. And on the flip side, Dale, who's our sales manager, is fantastic at fixing the duplicates. So he fixes the most, and I'm only second on that one. So what this tells me is that I'm the one ruining our system, basically. And then over time, so you can see how often we're using the sort of demo dashboard suite and that sort of stuff, you can start tracking it. So that's included by default and starts tracking by default. There is a question from Mark in there. We've recently installed Duplicare. Does it make sense to delete all existing duplicate detection rules and rebuild them as DG Plus rules so they're all in one place? It's up to you. You can do or you don't have to. It depends if you're going to run into a limit of the out-of-the-box ones, basically. For me personally, I've always suggested people do it so there's a single place to manage them. But I've seen arguments both sides of the coin. So if you want to, is probably the best answer I've got to that for you right now.
I just jump in on that one as well. So if you do remake them as DG Plus rules, then you'll get some of the batch functionality as well that Matt's going to move on to in a minute. That you won't have if you carry on using the standard out-of-the-box duplicate detection rules as well.
Yeah, that's correct. I forgot about that because I've not gone to that bit yet. Okay, so that leads me on nicely. So it's almost like that tied in perfectly. That's great, right? We've stopped duplicates going forward, but the problem is we have all that stuff in our system that's been there for a long time, and I don't really want that. So if I go to DG Plus rules again, and I pick one of my rules, what you see at the top is a run batch to lovely button that, and it's nice and easy. You press that, and what you get is a new entity. So everything we've done is done as entities, and I've not really touched on it yet. And if I get time at the end, I'll sort of go back to it. Is that everything we do is done in a fully compliant Microsoft way. What that means is that it can be exposed through the API. So for any developers listening or any developers that care, you can extend this stuff even more. You can put it onto web forms. You can integrate it into your systems. You can fire plugins and workflows, that sort of stuff. So there's a lot you can do. So everything we do is done as entities, and this is just a nice time to show that, because all that button did for me was went to make a new entity and pre-filled in a couple of fields. So it gave it a name. That was me. The rule set that I want to run this job against. So in this case, this contact match. Auto merge. So if I find a duplicate, or if we find a duplicate in your system, do you want us to basically do that quick merge for you? So if you're happy that your digit rules are right and your merge rules are right, you can set that to be yes on a Friday afternoon. You can press save on this record. You can go home. You can come back on a Monday morning, and assuming based on your rules and everything was right, you have no duplicates in your system. It just runs itself. And yeah, that's the ultimate end game of where we have, and we have a lot of clients who've used that on our initial cleanse, and it's a very, very powerful thing for what is essentially a single sort of no to yes checkbox. So for now, I'll stick to no. Most of the time you'll be a no on that. The odd time you'll be yes on that. You'll notice the benefits. And then we have filter master, filter candidate. This is the bit I always struggle to explain very well. The best way to think about it is pots. You have pots of masters and pots of candidates. So a candidate is thing you want to find a duplicate of, and master is where you want to find the duplicate to. So a good example of that is, because what this is a view. So this is a saved user view or a system view. So I can do active contacts. So you can see I've got all sorts of contacts there. This is all my saved views. So what you could have is you could have a view that is leads made in the last 7 days. So what I want to do is I want to find any matching lead across all of my open leads from any of my leads in the last 7 days. So this is how to sort of make it efficient and that sort of stuff. Now, what you can do, and I don't really touch on it too much today, is that you can schedule this stuff. So we have clients that every night they dedupe all their leads they made in the last 24 hours against all of their active leads. And you can also dedupe leads against contacts. So they do the double hit of leads to leads and leads to contacts. And if you leave it blank, it does to everyone on your system. So for now, we'll leave that blank. And then finally, store duplicate ID. So we use a field behind the scenes to sort of flag these duplicates as what they are. Now, what you can do with that is that the store duplicate ID updates that on all the records. So in this case, if we was to do contacts, we would go and update every single contact that we found as a duplicate with this unique ID. That enables you to export that out into Excel or your platform of choice if you want to analyze it in sort of en masse. I've seen people do that. So the reason that's optional is that the people don't necessarily want us going to touch all those records all the time, because obviously modified ons change and that sort of stuff. So when I'm happy with all that sort of stuff, I just press save. Simple as that. Now what this is doing, this is talking to our systems and telling them that there is a job to run. Now, for those on the call that have ever played with the code side of CRM, I will still call it CRM, and I will regret it every time I say it, is that you have a 2-minute window to work through your stuff. And in the case of this system, I could probably do it in 2 minutes, but if I've got a system where I've got 1 million records, there's not a chance I'm going to be able to finish that in 2 minutes. So what this does instead is this actually talks to our servers, or talks to our web service, I should say. So it sends a message up to our web service to say, there's a job waiting. What we have then is, right now, a server that listens to that sort of stuff. It will extract out the bare bones information it needs, runs the job on external servers from your CRM system, and then pushes the results back in again. Now, remember that thought, and I'll move on to something else in a second from that. So, but for now, what you need to remember is the data will temporarily leave your system, do its thing a short amount of time as possible, and come back in again. So once I've done that, you can see I've got them pending, and thankfully I've got a bunch actually completed because I've been playing with this. So if I go to a completed job instead, what I see is the same window now, but I've got a new tab. Tab's moved in UI, so it always confuses me. And now I have a results tab that's visible. It just gives me some statistics. So when it was finished, so 10 o'clock this morning, there's 217 records involved in my job. There was 213 unique within that. Therefore, there was 4 duplicates. And I had a GDPR red flag. Now, what a GDPR red flag is a conflict of consent. So do not email field, for example, one of the records that we think is a duplicate with another one says yes, one says no. So you just might need to be a little bit aware of what records you're picking and based on permissions. So once I've got that, I can either click on the record down there or I can hit resolve duplicates. Again, what I see is Spotify tell me to keep listening for some reason. Once that disappears, what I will see is the merge 3 contacts window. So this is, again, the same user interface. This is why I start with it at the start. If I go to the permissions fields, what I'm hoping you will see at some point, wherever they are, do not, there you go. Do not allow emails, allow, do not allow. That's the GDPR conflict that it's telling you about, so just be aware of that. But the buttons down here are slightly different. You've got 2 groups remaining and a merge and next. So I press merge and next on that. This is the same idea, it's doing that merge. But what this is going to do now is gone to 1 group. So thankfully, I've got a relatively small system. I've only got to do this twice. I've seen people's system where they have to do this tens of thousands of times, which is where the auto merge stuff can come in handy and save you some time. in this case, these aren't a duplicate. I don't want these to be the same. There's a real reason why I don't want to merge these records, so I can skip that instead. I don't have to do that. This gives me the option to make exclusion rules. So this basically remembers that behind the scenes. So if you were to do this scheduling of stuff, and you don't want to have to skip the first 5 records every single time you do it because you know it's the same 5 records, by making an exclusion rule, we'll remember that behind the scenes, and we won't tell you that next time. So they jump from left to right, and they've now completed. So that's how you've got an idea of where we're at. Now, before I move too far on, I want to jump back a step, which is what I mentioned about putting things online. And this is something that I've wanted to say for a long time, which I'm glad I can now finally say. So historically, we've always had the problem where, not the problem, but the single choice of we host within Azure, within our own data centers. So we understand data, we are ISO accredited, we jump through every single data security suite we possibly can do, but people still like Azure. If you're in America or you're in Australia or in your different countries, you necessarily might not want your data to leave your country, and we get that, we absolutely get that, and unfortunately we've never really had the option around it until now. So the big announcement that we're pleased to say now is that you can now basically pick by Azure region where you would like your data to live. I say live, it's live for the shortest period of time possible, but it still is an idea that it will temporarily come out of your system, go somewhere else for a little bit for when we do the processing. As soon as we're finished, we delete it so it doesn't stay there. But even in the short amount of time that it is where it is, you can be in much more control of where that's going to stay. Hopefully that makes sense. So you would just change that in there. If you are a current user and you see this, you will still only say data 8 hosted. This is sort of opt into different places, so speak to us if you're on this call for a refresher. This won't be immediately visible for you, so speak to us and we'll work out the best way of addressing it. But my demo suite has it enabled in every single region within Azure that we currently support. And I did that in the Duplicare administration model-driven app if you're curious. So back to my demo now. And that's it for a lot of duplicates. The thing I will touch on very quickly, because I'm conscious I'm running out of time, there may be questions, and I know there's a couple more slides that Mark wants to talk about. And I need to give you a little background on it first. So the background on it is that there is things like fuzzy address in the system, and there is also the fact that people will do searches on phone numbers. People are so inconsistent in the way they enter that data. Something as simple as road and RD, or avenue and AVE, and spelling numbers out, or putting +44 on the region code of a phone number. All these things are all things that stop you finding duplicates. So when we built the rules behind the scenes, we had to fight this problem. And the thing that we ended up coming up with was so powerful, actually, whilst it was never intended at the start, it became a fully fledged feature of the tool itself. And this is down here, is you have address fields and phone number fields. So it's basically standardization. So if you have an existing sort of, if you use our predictive address, for example, this isn't a replacement for that. This is not going to be, this is not address validation. This is not phone number validation. This is standardization. They're subtly different, but it's something I need to emphasize, that this isn't a replacement for if you already use some of our other tools. If you don't have our tools, then it's a nice, viable alternative. So within my contacts, I've got it set up on lead and contact. So if I was to go into a contact, in fact, I'll go to a lead. If I go back to my old lead that I was using before, and I go and type out an address in a useless manner, and this isn't my home address, so don't go and send me spam. But my marketing team would hate me for entering details like that, because that is nigh on impossible to do anything with. If I press save on that, what we're going to do is, other than ignore a duplicate, there you go. What you can see I've done there is that I have enriched the data. So again, this isn't necessarily proving it's valid. You've done a good job of getting commentary in the postcode, so we know the street, we know the city. This isn't necessarily telling you that 39 exists, but because we're not going to take data away that's invalid. But what it does do is enriches it as and where it can accurately. So Av became avenue and it capitalized it. We appended those two bits data, postcode went in the right place, and we added a country in. So that was just a nice easy bonus that what we put in there. And the same with phone numbers. So if I just clear that field off, I've set this for international right now. You can configure this to be whatever sort of your national one is. And if I was to enter my office phone number in mobile phone, because why not? And I press save on that, what you'll see is that will format it to a standard format. The standard means it's going to help duplicates finding, it's going to help you do advanced finds. You just know what to expect. So I've set it to be international with the punctuation. You can turn all that on and off, and you would do that just within these entities down here, but I won't go through them too much. And with that, unless Mark corrects me, that's sort of Duplicare as a whole. And we can, like I said, we can take questions. We can take questions offline. If you want anything that you've seen here tailored a bit more towards you and your business, you can reach out to us and let us know. But other than that, I will hand back over to Mark.
Great, thank you, Matt. So I just wanted to share a few final slides to wrap up. So just to reinforce some of the things Matt was saying about some of the new features for those on the call that are already Duplicare users. Some of the things we're introducing today. The two big ones really are these data sovereignty options. So we can now select to have that data processed across different Azure regions of your choice. So if you are in the US, your data can't leave the US, we can now process it in the US. And likewise, we can spin up that in different Azure regions around the world. And the second one is the enhanced user experience that Matt demonstrated of as you're entering a new record, immediately highlight the records that we're finding duplicates of, rather than having to go through extra steps of saving the record or using the merge option to go and see what those records are. We've also introduced this idea of an extra security control of when you are configuring up your rule, you can select whether you want to only find records that the user who's creating the duplicate is allowed to see, or whether they should get a notification that they're creating a duplicate even if they're not allowed to see the record that it's a duplicate of. It's a kind of a specialized use case, but as Matt explained, it's not kind of leaking details of that record, other than that there is one there that is a duplicate. And finally, as always, we're always looking for improvements in the matching, improvements in the speed of the matching. And so there's several of those sort of back-end changes in there as well. Finally, just to cover off any sort of pricing type immediate questions you might have. The pricing model is based on your usage of it, which is based around your users and the number of records you got in there, and what features of that you're wanting to use. So we can turn on and off some of these features that you'd be interested in. So please do give us a call, give us an email. There's all sorts of ways you can get in contact with us to get those details across, and we can give you some accurate information on all that. We do offer free trials. You can install it today from AppSource, and we can set you up a 30-day free trial so you can get to grips with it. We won't leave you on your own during that trial. Just to experiment with it, we will help you. There is a little bit of experience to get you going to build these rules and get you going on day one, and we're happy to share some of that with you. But like I said, any questions that you might have that haven't already answered, so our contact details on there. You can contact Matt or myself directly. You can contact us through the website. For any commercial questions, Dale or Anthony, whose details are on screen there, will be your best first point of call. Other than that, I'd like to say thank you for attending. I think we're just on time.
There is a question before we go too far.
Okay.
So Brenda asks, do you have products that perform some of these awesome functional systems other than Dynamics?
So we don't have it integrated to the same level. So Dynamics is really our flagship integration for this, but it is based off technology that we can repurpose for other things. So to get this sort of dedupe and merging done on other things would typically be more of a bespoke project that we would take on, but we do absolutely take those on. We do that quite regularly for sort of data migration type projects. People are coming from 17 different spreadsheets, 2 ERP systems and an old CRM, and they're moving to Dynamics or they're moving to Salesforce. We will quite regularly do this sort of thing as part of those sort of projects. We can do them as one-off cleanses, do that regularly for the likes of Salesforce, as a CRM product called Workbooks that we will deal with quite often. But yes, if you got a requirement around any of that, then please let us know. We would say we don't have a packaged product equivalent to Duplicare for other ones, but we can absolutely still do a lot of the same data processing work for other systems. Okay.
Hang on, got a new question. Oh no, that's Brendan saying thank you. No problem.
So the session will be recorded. It's our first one going through this team system for doing it, so not quite sure how long that will take to be available, but we will let you know so you can share that link with your colleagues. We've got a question saying, can you send me costs? Yes, we can send out costs to anyone if you drop us an email. So we've got your contact details. All we see at the moment, I'm afraid, is your first name. So we're not quite sure who's asking which questions. But yes, drop us an email and we can send you back costs. Addressing in particular, there's got an awful lot of different variants around costs for that predictive address system. That's down to how the data is licensed, especially in the UK from Royal Mail. Yeah, let us know and we will get some accurate figures back to you.
Yep, Dale's fine as well. You can email Dale if you wish. I'll stick around for a few minutes if people still have questions. Feel free. But yeah, otherwise, thank you for listening to my bit as well.
Yes, thank you, everybody.